Hurricane Katrina was spotted in the Atlantic Ocean and migrated around Florida to the Gulf of Mexico. In late August of 2005, Katrina took its toll physically on Louisiana, Texas, and Mississippi. But the physical effects were just the beginning. Though this hurricane struck three separate states, it dealt particular damage in one region, New Orleans. Katrina was estimated to have an economic impact of over $100 billion and managed to leave hundreds of thousands of residents in New Orleans unemployed and homeless. 80% of the city was left flooded, and over 1,200 were estimated dead. Yet, before the hurricane even struck, the region already had the highest unemployment rate in America. Around this time period, the U.S. economy was flourishing with an employment increase of 19.5% and a population increase of 13.1%. Yet, in the New Orleans, there was an opposite effect with the loss of both jobs and population. The New Orleans economy was based off of a three-legged stool industry: tourism, port operations, and educational services. The tourism leg included the arts, entertainment, and food services. New Orleans was known for its French quarters, its internationally renowned restaurants, and its many celebrations including Mardi Gras, the New Orleans Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, and the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. These events alone drew in thousands of tourists to the hustling city. Port operations included such activities as mining, transportation, and warehousing, but were less influential on New Orleans' economy. The Port of New Orleans and the Port of South Louisiana handled the majority of the nation's trade. 5,000 ships from 60 different countries docked there daily with such imports as chemicals, petroleum, coffee, and cocoa beans. Finally, educational services caused the New Orleans region to have a major role in higher education. The city held major universities such as Xavier University, Loyola University, Southern University, Dillard University, and many more. Before Katrina, almost 50% of New Orleans' employment rested in this three-legged stool industry. Just before Katrina, the average wage of an American was about $643 a week in New Orleans, 11% under the national wage average. At the time, tourism kept its ground as an important industry with 16% of employment and 10% of wages. The government represented 20.8% of all jobs and 24.7% of wages, keeping 1 of every 5 people working for the government. Also, 1 out of every 6 people were employed through tourism. There were a total of 191,701 jobs just before the hurricane hit. After Katrina, New Orleans' local economy was absolutely destroyed. The tourism industry, one of the most crucial legs of New Orleans' economy, lost about 22,900 jobs and a total of $382.7 million. Port operations lost about 3,500 jobs and a total of $136.1 million. The educational services lost about 2,000 jobs and a total of $66.4 million in wages. And finally, healthcare and social services lost 13,418 jobs and a total of $377.8 million in wages. New Orleans' local economy truly suffered, and Hurricane Katrina has caused both immediate and long-term effects that have evidently remained prominent for years following the disaster. Hurricane Katrina has been regarded as the costliest hurricane in America, with a total cost of damages exceeding $100 billion. On the other hand, the national economy did not suffer a toll anywhere near the local extent of Hurricane Katrina. Though Hurricane Katrina was devastating to the nation's heart, the direct effect it had only consisted of a 3.5% loss of the U.S.'s total gross domestic product. After Katrina hit, the GDP of the nation dropped less than 2% since there was still vibrant activity in the other states. The U.S. economy was growing at an annual rate of 4.2%, so the storm didn't have enough of a negative impact to result in a national recession. In fact, citizens across America began spending money for food and shelter to help the victims of Katrina. This increased spending immediately after the catastrophe actually helped ease some of the economic loss caused by the storm. As discussed, construction boomed at the local level and created national interest that benefited for the country's economy. Apart from the GDP, trade was an issue that arose due to many of the Gulf ports in the affected areas. In 2003, it was estimated that these ports took in about $100 billion worth of imports, almost 1/6 of the United States' total imports. These effects were terrible, but short-lived since the ports were reopened only months after the storm. In total, Hurricane Katrina didn't have a catastrophic effect on the national economy, but resources in New Orleans did take a local and national toll. Anyone who felt the effects of Hurricane Katrina is more than aware of the biggest resource involved: oil. Before Katrina hit, the Gulf Coast was responsible for 1/10 of America's oil production. In addition, 24% of the natural gas supply extracted from petroleum was also from this region. More than 20 offshore oil platforms were destroyed, and even a few oil rigs were found uprooted. The Louisiana offshore oil port controlled 11% of America's total oil consumption. On August 27th of 2005, the Louisiana offshore oil port was forced to close, causing a reported deficit of 420,000 barrels per day. Because oil production in the United States was cut by a third, the price of oil began to fluctuate catastrophically. For example, Texas suffered a record high of $70 per barrel. The New Orleans area suffered horrible price gouging for all necessities, including oil and even water. The United Kingdom felt a sharp rise of $7 per gallon, a 3% increase from the norm. The oil industry was damaged nationwide, but none took it worse than New Orleans. By September 7th, the oil production returned to 42% normal, leaving 10 refineries shut down. As the nation was recovering, the New Orleans still felt the effects of price gouging. These resources caused quite an effect, locally and nationally. Today, the three-legged stool system is still suffering, but it has improved. The New Orleans area lost so much of its tourism, including the French quarters. The ports of the area were brought back to normal almost a year after the disaster. Also, the economy in this area went from no selling or spending to a normal functioning market. However, even 4 years after the disaster, the government is still repairing schools and hospitals to create a full functioning society. To the citizens of America, Hurricane Katrina is just a memory. But the people of New Orleans still deal with the hardships every single day. We must continue to help New Orleans get back on their feet economically, socially, and environmentally. Hurricane Katrina was definitely the costliest economic natural disaster, but I feel it was also one of the costliest natural disasters to our heart.